Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome to a live stream of the upcoming flyby around the moon. Running solo here, so I'm just going to get make sure the audio is all working here. Let me make sure that all right, good. Looks like everybody can hear me. And please check in the chat, say hi. Let us know where you're watching from. We always like to know where everybody's coming in. What you're seeing here is a live image from the external spacecraft from the Artemis 2 spacecraft. It's one of the cameras on the solar array. And that's the moon. Not the side that we see. Almost everything you see there is on the far side of the moon. And so we'll be seeing a bunch of that. I've got some close-ups to show you as well. And of course, we're watching it all the stuff that comes down. Let's bring you on with mission control and let you listen in a little bit while I troubleshoot anything else that we need to do here. Let's see here.
5,000 miles away from the moon. Again, we expect their closest distance to the moon be about 4,066 miles. That is an estimate at this point, and we will make sure to share that closest approach distance once we receive it.
Houston integrity question, did you just want us to cool the window with the condensation hose, or did you want us to put the shroud back on and cool the window at the same time?
Victor, we definitely want you to cool down the window with the condensation hose. It's crew preference whether you put the shroud back on. The hose will allow you to do that if it helps with your lunar flyby.
Okay, copy. We're going to do both at the same time. Thank you.
Houston copies.
All right, and what we've got now is internal views of the spacecraft, which are not very interesting because they've got all the lights off. Because what they're looking at in their windows, and they literally have to take turns to do this, is to see the moon.
We are now seeing a half moon.
Here's a shot of Jeremy Hansen looking out the window, actually back at the Earth on the way out earlier today. They got a bunch of selfies and things like that.
We're happy to hear it, and we see half moon, full moon joy still.
We also have, as they've been going around, they've been getting a few more shots. So let's take a look at some of the shots that have come through earlier. here's a shot that at first looks like a full moon. And I mean, it is almost a full moon. You can see a little bit of the left edge there is kind of in shadow. But most of the moon that we see in this image, all of this stuff, this is actually the near side. We're used to seeing this. The man in the moon kind of face is actually kind of, well, it's tough to see because it's slipped around the globe a little
Crew
bit.
reporting from Orion
This
that they are
thing
seeing
here.
half the moon, which is about what it looks like here from this view.
Oh, there we go. This thing here, this is Oriental Basin. Hopefully you can just hear my voice at this point and not get too distracting. There we go. This little sort of circular feature here is called Oriental, which kind of means east. It's right on the eastern edge of the moon as seen from the Earth. So that's kind of the limit of what we call the near side of the moon. Only one side of the moon faces towards the Earth, plus or minus. There's a little bit of a wiggle that we won't get into. But basically everything to the left of that big bullseye target with the sort of dark in the middle, and then there's a big ring around it, and then there's another ring around it, is the far side of the moon. Now the far side is not the same as the dark side. Pink Floyd notwithstanding, the dark side of the moon is not really a thing. The dark side of the moon is basically just whichever side is having night right then. So that might be the side facing us, might be the side facing away. Every time you see a half moon, you're seeing half the day side and half the night side, or half the dark side of the moon. So the dark side of the moon is not really a big deal. We see that all the time. And because it's dark, you don't get much. But the far side of the moon, these are things that very few humans have ever seen. The Apollo astronauts, of course, went around back in the 70s, but they did not have 4K cameras like we have now. And even the live images coming back are pretty impressive, but the crew are taking shots with digital cameras, and they have one zoom lens that is everybody's favorite, apparently, the 80 to 400 millimeter zoom lens. It's basically a small telescope on the front of the camera that they're sticking out the window and taking some pictures. Now, this shot was taken with that from a pretty good distance. This was just as they were coming close to the beginning of the flyby. They've got a couple of other ones. Now, here's another one. And you can see, first of all, that the perspective has changed. It's rotated a bit. That's just because the spacecraft, or whatever window the astronaut happened to be in, was tilted a little bit. There's no up or down in space, so rotation doesn't really mean anything. But the Oriental Basin is more towards the center of the planet, of the moon, and you can see a lot more shadowing here. And the near side is becoming, is sort of wrapping around the far side of the moon from where Artemis is, because they're actually going in behind the moon and they're going to come back around. So the view that we actually have now in the upper right window is actually more like a half moon. Everything that they can see right now is on the far side of the moon, pretty much. Now, I want to zoom in a little bit on this picture because the detail they're getting is incredible. Now, at first I was thinking, like, they don't actually get that close to the moon. Something like 6,500 kilometers away, something like that. I forget the exact number. That's not very close. I mean, the Apollo astronauts were 100 kilometers away when they were taking their pictures. So you would think it wouldn't be as good of a view. But modern technology and some good camera lenses, and the fact that you're in space, there's no atmosphere or distortion or heat waves or any of that kind of stuff between you and your target, makes for some really, really amazing shots. This is you can actually, let me just move this guy over here. You can see the Oriental Basin up at the top, just sort of half of it here. And it's not just a big dark thing. There's all sorts of bright spots and little craters over top, and then these big rings that go around it. And there's actually signs of it sort of splashing all over the moon in different directions. The impact that made that 3.8 billion years ago was big enough that it basically punched right through the crust of the moon down into the interior, which was still molten, and the lava could flow out and fill that center with the dark basaltic lava that we see there. So you wind up having these, what we call maria. Originally people thought they were seas, and all those things that make up the man in the moon on the near side, all those dark areas, they thought they were seas. Well, they're these volcanic plains where the lava has bubbled up from these giant impacts and then solidified and made relatively smooth areas. So those things are relatively new. And the cratering has been happening since the beginning of the formation of the solar system, basically. The Earth is covered with craters like this too, but of course on the Earth, they all get erased. They all get removed. We have glaciers, volcanoes, earthquakes, oceans, an atmosphere that helps burn things up. Any cratering evidence on Earth is few and far between, and you have to dig deep for it. Whereas on the moon, it's like a crater museum. Every crater that's ever been made on the moon is still there until another crater overlaps it. So we have a complete cratering history of the moon. Well, so what? What does that mean? Well, what it means is cratering is part of the formation of the solar system. All the planets got put together by little pieces coming together and smashing into each other and making bigger pieces. And there's still little pieces out there. A little piece, only about 10 kilometers in diameter, hit the Earth 66 million years ago and wiped out the dinosaurs and 75% of other life on Earth. Pretty important to understand that kind of process and what it means for us today. So that's just one of the scientific goals behind missions like Artemis, is learning about this cratering thing. And it's kind of cool because these astronauts are just looking out the window. They're taking pictures, but the pictures aren't coming back in real time because I don't know if you've ever had to download your iPhone's pictures. It takes a long time. So the live views that we're getting are okay. These views that we're getting downloaded few and far between right now are really impressive, but they're verbally describing everything too. So let's listen into the mission control here and just see what they have to say. Let's make sure we get a little bit of the. Oh.
And then from Hertzsprung toward Oriental, there appears to be a frozen, a rippling pond, but frozen, or like choppy waves when it's windy out, choppy water, and then it freezes instantly. That's the texture. If you walk down there barefoot, it looks like it would be hard on your feet, like lava. After it's cooled, it would be pokey. Except for right there in the center of Hertzsprung, it looks paved, like a paved road, nice and smooth.
Victor, that's a wonderful description. Going from a paved road to lava reminds us of the Icelandic Highlands. Thanks for that.
In science, another in the interior of the very intact, the interior of the intact crater at Hertzsprung is albedo variation. I think I heard one of the window crew maybe say color variation, but definitely albedo variation. There's lighter patches and slightly darker patches. It's not swirling, it's just patchy. It just has spots that are lighter, and I would say a predominantly darker average area.
Great descriptions, Victor. Thanks. Not swirly, just patchy is really helpful for us.
The voice you're hearing there talking to pilot Victor Glover is Canadian astronaut Jenny Gibbons. She is on Capcom right now, and that is one of her roles as the backup crew. She gets to be one of the communicators of the folks there. It is pretty cool to see all the people checking in the chat. Nice to see you all. Oh, hey, Brian, nice to see you. And yeah, let us know, for those of you that I won't recognize the name of, just let us know where you're watching from. I just like to be able to tell folks, what the reach of the program is. It helps us continue here. We're going to bring back Victor Glover because he's got a little bit more to say here. Hold on.
It's just so visually captivating that the Terminator is the most striking thing that I've seen so far.
We've been loving your evocative descriptions, Victor. You really are bringing us along with you, and we're following along with visualizations that pale in comparison to your descriptions. Thanks.
Oh, hey, Rachel. Nice to see you guys. Yeah, you're much closer to the moon than we are from where you are, I guess, right? Yeah.
Integrity Science, one more question on a status of what the window team chose to observe for crew choice.
Oh, hey, Linda. Nice to see you too. Awesome. This is like a reunion of all sorts of old friends and family. This is great. It's amazing to see how many people have gotten excited about this mission in the last couple of days. Like there's so much going on in the world, and needless to say, not all of it is wonderful. And so I think this kind of got lost. And then all of a sudden, when the launch actually happened and they were heading to the moon and people caught on to it, I'm getting lots of calls and media and things like that. And a lot of people that aren't normally interested in space even seem to be getting into it. It's a bright spot in the world today that we can actually do something together internationally and solve big problems. It's a hopeful kind of situation. If we can put our mind to putting people on the moon, we can put our mind to many other problems that we could solve. Joyce, wow, nice to see you. Man, it's been a long time. I haven't been to enough conferences recently. Oh, hey, Bob, nice to see you as well. Bob has a question. What size would the moon look like from the astronaut's point of view from 6,500 kilometers away? Well, they keep saying it'll look like a basketball held at arm's length. And, what does that really mean? It's about 20 times as big as the view that you get from here on Earth. But, of course, it's so that makes it, quite substantially larger. Sorry, 40 times. It's about 20 degrees across, so 40 times as big as we see it from Earth, which is pretty impressive. But they're also using a zoom lens, a 400 millimeter zoom lens, which is basically the equivalent of 8 times magnification as well. So 8 times 20, 8 times 40 is like 240 times bigger than you see it when you go outside. So that's a lot of detail. And as I mentioned, it's not even like if you had a telescope on Earth and you could magnify 240 times, you still wouldn't get as good of a view because we live on a planet with air. And that air basically just makes it very difficult to get a clear view. It's always moving the light around. Every little bit of heat or wind or pressure or whatever affects the light that comes in. So this gives us a nice way to actually get a really, really clear view of the moon. Still, I'm going to look at the moon with my telescope the next chance I get and try and imagine what it would be like to just be zooming around it. Okay, hopefully I'm not getting too much audio cross back here. I've got, I need a third hand and a third ear to really do this show. Bob, we are going to talk, I'll give you a call maybe tomorrow and we'll chat about that idea you had because I think it would work really well. Hey, Maya, nice to see you as well. Hope you're doing well. It is kind of, your post today that I saw, Maya, was kind of inspirational. It reminded me that, this is kind of a mission that, we can think about the positive aspects of science and technology and spacecraft and rockets and all that kind of stuff and international relations. This is sort of what happens when you do it properly. And they've been talking to the crew on the last 4 days, and it's 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. And one of the journalists asked if the Americans teased the Canadian, and they were like, "What do you mean? Why would we tease him? Like, Jeremy is one of my best friends." Like they didn't at all care what country any of them were from, because they were thinking about this as we are humans going on behalf of humanity back to the moon. And even though there's still some political stuff, but in terms of the race with China, for example, the idea of going as citizens of Earth is a very hopeful way of looking at things. So they were talking just a little while ago that they can now see the moon and the Earth together out the same window. Now, we don't see it in this view. This is an external camera, so it doesn't give us the same kind of view. But they can actually see the Earth, which is almost a half Earth, the same view that we have of the moon here. And they're getting closer and closer together as they fly around the backside. So basically, they're going to fly around the back here and then come back around. When they go around the moon, we'll see the Earth set against the lunar horizon, and it will disappear. And then the spacecraft will disappear. We won't have radio contact. We'll have what's called loss of signal, and we won't hear from them for about 45 minutes. And then they'll come around the other side, and they'll see the Earth rise above the lunar horizon. And it's going to be a fantastic view. The moon has been getting bigger in the window for the last couple of days. Now it's going to stay about this size, but the phase, the angle that they're looking at it will definitely change quite rapidly. Just a couple of hours ago, it was almost a full moon as seen from Artemis, and it's now a half moon. So we're moving around quite quickly. Okay, I'm going to bring up some of the public affairs officer here, who's doing a pretty good job of trying to explain some things. So I'm going to turn you over to her for just a moment.
To describe the topography of features along or near the terminator. They're also looking for more information on any color or tone variations, and they're hoping that the crew will take images to illustrate their findings. Glover reported earlier that the crew has missed none of their targets when they are photographing at the window. We aren't hearing the conversations that the crew is having right now, but these are being recorded to their personal computer devices, PCDs, and those will be sent down to the science team. The science team will have a conference with the crew tomorrow morning to discuss their findings and experience when looking at the moon today. We have a few minutes left while the crew is discussing the terminator. And if you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view of the moon, our moon, from the Orion spacecraft and a camera on its solar array. Inside that spacecraft, 4 astronauts, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen, the first 4 people to fly around the moon in over 50 years. This is our lunar flyby day, and the crew has already surpassed one record today. The crew passed the Apollo 13 distance record at 12:57 p.m. Central, 1:57 p.m. Eastern. Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen calling down that he hopes it's a record soon broken by other explorers.
And there you heard NASA Public Affairs giving a little bit of a summary of what we've been doing the last little while. The flyby coverage actually started about noon today Central, and that was just too long to be doing a live thing for us. And so we just started at 5 o'clock because this is the time period where we're going to see a whole bunch of things happen at once. We're going to see these close-up views of the moon. We're going to hopefully get a few of the pictures back from the high-res cameras. They've sent a couple so far, but of course the radio is also sending back information on life support and all that kind of stuff. And that's really making it a little difficult to be able to, just send pictures back. But we also have, we're going to see Earthset. We're going to see the spacecraft disappear behind the moon. We're going to lose comm for about 40 minutes is now the new update, a little bit less than expected. That'll be the time when they get to their closest to the moon. Now, just because we can't hear from them live, obviously the astronauts are going to be up against the window, noses pressed against the glass, taking pictures. They're recording voice descriptions of everything. They're spelling off every 10 minutes or so at the windows so that they can make notes while it's still fresh in their mind from their visual observations. There's a whole bunch of pretty frantic flyby science going on here. And they're also going to see a solar eclipse because as they move around, they're going to see the sun blocked out by the moon. Now, they're very close to the moon, so the moon is gigantic. When we see a solar eclipse on Earth, the sun and the moon look about the same size, and you get this beautiful ring of fire kind of situation. They're not going to see that. They're going to see sort of a gigantic moon eclipsing the sun. They'll briefly see the outer atmosphere, the corona, but then the moon will eclipse the whole thing, and then it'll sort of reappear on the other side. So they've got some things to look at there, and then they'll have Earthrise, which for a lot of people is the big picture. This is the picture that everybody wants to see. In 1968, Apollo 8 went up around the moon. They did 10 orbits, and they took the famous video of the Earth rising above the moon. And it was in a turbulent time. It was like the Vietnam War. There were civil rights demonstrations throughout North America. Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy had been assassinated. It was a terrible year. And right at the end, right at Christmas time, Apollo 8 went around the moon and sent back this picture showing the Earth not with borders and divisions and races and creeds and things like that, but just one little planet in space. And it blew everybody's mind. And those images helped kickstart the burgeoning environmental movement that said, hey, maybe our planet isn't infinite and we can't just keep polluting it as much as we want. So many things came from that picture. I think that's the kind of picture we would love to see again now with modern technology, but I think the world could use that kind of reminder as well. Let's check in the chat here. And oh, Stan, nice to see you. How are you guys doing? Oh, and Forest family. Oh, good to see you. I still have your Jeremy Hansen autographed picture from that time he was in town that he didn't stay to do autographs. I still have it for you. It's sitting like right over here. It says to the Forest family and stuff like that. So let's chat. I got to get you that. Burl, how are you, my friend? Good to see you. I'm doing all right. I'm doing space stuff now, hey? So yeah, we're looking at the inside of the spacecraft, which quite frankly is a kind of a lame view because, oh, there we go. Thank you, NASA, for switching for me. There you go. This is the view from the GoPro that they have attached to the outside of the spacecraft. It's the Orion spacecraft has these 4 solar wings that stick out in kind of an X, and at the end of those, there's a camera. And that's nice because they, the solar wings can rotate and move around, so if they need to change the camera angle, they can. It turned out to be kind of funny because as they're in space, they have to exercise, and as they're exercising, it's like a rowing machine where you're pulling on the string kind of thing. And that made some vibrations happen, and the solar wings would do this. So you could always tell when someone was exercising inside because the cameras on the outside would wiggle back and forth, and you could just see that there was this motion going on. So at first I was like, what's going on there? That doesn't look good, but it didn't take long for, obviously NASA knew that it was going to happen. I just didn't. It was pretty funny to see. Okay, I was looking to see if they had provided any more of the high-resolution images, and no more have come back down. But I am going to go back just to, for those of you that just joined us, there were a couple of shots of the moon that came in earlier because as they were approaching, obviously you want to start taking pictures. And when they were coming in, the moon was almost full, and so you wind up with a shot like this. The moon has 2 kinds of terrain. There's the dark terrain here that we see mostly on this side. This is the near side of the moon that faces towards the Earth. And these are called maria because we thought they looked like seas. Well, they're not. They're just flat areas of dark volcanic rock. But the idea is that, the moon is covered with craters. Each one is a hole from when an asteroid smashed into it and exploded. Well, some of those impacts were big enough that they punched through the crust into the molten interior of the moon early in its days. The moon doesn't have lava inside it anymore, we don't think, but when it had just formed, it was still warm enough to have that. Either it punched right through the crust, or the crust was so thin that the volcanoes could then go through that weakened crust, and then the lava would fill up these basins left by the impact, and they would just fill them up as if you were filling up like your dog's water dish. And then as the lava cooled, it solidified, and you get these relatively new, relatively uncratered areas. Most of those happened 4 billion to 3.8 billion years ago, so very early in the solar system's history. And not a lot of cratering has happened since then because they're not covered up with craters. Like the rest of the moon is all covered with craters, but the part with the Maria here, there's a few, but not really that many. So by looking at the cratering rates, we can actually tell which is the older part of the moon, but we can also tell a little bit about what the cratering rate was like for the solar system. And of course, the moon's right next to us, so it's got pretty much the same cratering rate that the Earth had. We can't see those craters on the Earth because we've got, oceans and glaciers that come down and carve out the land, and plate tectonics where mountains are thrust up and stuff like that. The moon is frozen. It doesn't change. So it's like a crater museum. Now here's I forgot to point out the milestone they've been using is this thing here. This is Oriental Basin. It is right on the eastern edge of the visible side of the moon from Earth. So basically we never see this whole view. We see it kind of from the side, and so it just looks like a very thin kind of oval on the edge of the moon, and we can barely see it. So that kind of marks the extreme end on what we can see on the near side. This is all the near side of the moon. Everything over here is the far side of the moon, which we never see from Earth. And so as the spacecraft is moving out and starting to go around the moon, we're starting to swing over to the far side. So if we go to the next picture here, now we can see, well, here's Oriental again. Oops, there we go. And it is almost in the center of the moon. So they've actually swung sort of a quarter of the way around the moon by the time they took this picture. And then you're starting to see what's, you'll hear it in NASA sometimes called the Terminator, which is not the killer robot that I always thought it was, but it's the edge, it's the sunset or the sunrise line. It's the edge between dark and light. And so the dark side of the moon is just the part that the sun can't shine on. Pink Floyd notwithstanding, there is no dark side of the moon. It changes all the time. Sometimes we see the dark side of the moon. If you go out tonight, you'll see, well, I guess early in the morning tomorrow, you'll see the moon rising, and it'll be kind of a little bit more than half, and the rest of the circle is the dark side of the moon. But all of this stuff is stuff that we can't see from Earth. And some of it is stuff that we have never been able to put human eyes on before. I mean, there are robot spacecraft that have mapped the whole moon. We've got photographs of a lot of it. Some of it's actually only laser data that's then like topographical LiDAR kind of stuff. So there are some areas that we just no one has ever actually seen that these astronauts are gonna be able to see. We're just gonna zoom in on these pictures here because some of the detail is amazing. Now let me move our live view. When you look across the moon, sometimes you'll see these little white spots. These white spots all along here are relatively fresh craters. They are craters that happened in the last million years or billion years or so, pardon me, with a B. And some of them are even more recent. There may be some that are tens of thousands of years old. Basically, they impact and they spray this material from underneath the moon, and it's quite bright white when it's first exposed. But like most things, you leave it in the sun long enough and it starts to darken. I last about 5 minutes in the sun before I am like lobster red. Well, by seeing how dark these craters are, we can actually figure out their ages. And that helps us, of course, figure out the cratering rate and all that kind of stuff. And as we go to the full resolution image here, we're starting, there's Oriental Basin up at the top, just half of it, and you can really see the concentric rings that sort of go around it. And then all of these craters, like there is no place that doesn't have craters on it, basically. It is just one mass of impacts. The Earth looked like this at some point in its history, before the oceans were in place, before all of that stuff. So learning about this helps us to learn about our own planet. Now, let's go back to our live view here. Even in the time that we've started in our broadcast, we were almost exactly a half moon. Here, let's just bring this up just a little bit. Now we are closer to the moon. The moon doesn't even fit in the whole frame of the GoPro camera anymore. And we're definitely less than a half moon. So what we're going to see at some point will be the moon going down to a crescent size, and then coming in from the right, we'll start to see the Earth, also a crescent, and the two will get closer and closer until finally the Earth sets behind the limb of the moon. And that will be the point when we pretty much lose contact with the spacecraft. We probably won't get the most amazing pictures of that event live here, but the crew is taking pictures, and the images that they can't send over the next couple of days while they're in space will, of course, just come back with them when they get here. It's funny, you know, the Apollo days, they shot everything on film, and other than their terrible TV pictures, there was, like, all the good stuff came back well after the mission, because they literally had to develop the film and print it and release it. Here we are more than 50 years later, and we've got these amazing digital cameras and so much technology, but there's still the limitation of how much information you can send back and forth on in a timely manner, 400,000 kilometers out into space and back. And clearly, I mean, getting pretty pictures back is nice, but knowing that the crew is still alive and being able to monitor the life support systems and the trajectory and the engines, all that stuff also takes up data. So if you've ever been sitting at home and, you know, 3 of the kids are trying to watch Netflix and somebody else is playing a virtual game or whatever, and you're trying to work on a spreadsheet or whatever, and things slow down, same kind of thing. We'll actually see when they're downloading pictures, because the quality of the live stream goes down a bit. They basically, you know, shutter that a little bit and restrict its speed to give us so that they can get the other picture down. That's how we know that there's a good picture coming, and it usually takes them, you know, half an hour or so to sort of get it and put it together, process it, and then get it to the website. If you haven't already discovered, NASA has actually been doing a pretty good job of keeping up with, you know, the mission. They've got the 24/7 coverage. We're currently watching NASA's official broadcast here, which is through their YouTube channel. They also have another view, and actually maybe we'll switch over to that. They have another view which is just the live camera stuff without some of the commentary. Oh, and that one doesn't seem to be showing anything right now, so that's not very useful. Here we go. Let's see if we can get another view here. Okay, I'm just going to see if I can get us to another view here. Oh, look at that. It's much larger. Okay. You know, I'm going to have to do a little adjustment on that. Just give me a moment. But yeah, the NASA.gov website has all sorts of options for watching and tracking the mission. Oh, hey, Dale, nice to see you. Nice to see you guys. How's it going? Hope things are well with you guys. And Brian, nice to see you as well. It's yeah, there's so much stuff going on behind the scenes, and the public affairs officers basically can only tell so much stuff between the crew talking, because they're radioing down all sorts of commands back and forth and things like that. It makes it difficult for them to be able to really say much beyond sort of the basics. And so I like to think that I can add a little bit there. Let's see if I can bring our tracker up here. Wow, this thing is difficult. I'll just take a second here to get everything framed up nicely so that we can see the spacecraft. There we go. Okay. Wow. This thing's a little fussy. Okay, there we go. There we go. So here's their sort of live view tracker. And there's the Artemis spacecraft, of course. And let's see, it's all in miles here, unfortunately. 944 miles per hour. Not very fast. It's actually at its slowest point because it's gone out from the Earth and it's sort of running out of steam, and then the moon is just turning it around. So it's not going all that fast, which is great for the photographers. The people on board don't have to try and track a moving thing all that different. Up in the upper right, there's the Earth. And it is just a thin little crescent over there. And it is getting closer and closer to the spacecraft. If we just sort of change our angle a little bit here, let's see. Oh, that's as far over as we can go. Okay, it won't let us go all the way around. But yeah, no, that doesn't help us at all. But the sun is somewhere off to the right there, because that's why that right side of the moon and right side of the Earth is lit up. And there we go. Let's recenter. And of course, they've got the spacecraft oriented so that all the windows, which are all on one side of the spacecraft, are aimed at the moon so that the crew can be doing all the stuff that they want to be doing. Let us just see here if there's anything going on in our other. There we go. Okay, I'm going to bring up some mission control here, and we'll listen in to NASA's public affairs. Where are you? There you
are. Any of that 5 days, 27 minutes, and 39 seconds. The altitude at that time would be 252,000. 756 statute miles. These are our latest numbers, and we'll make sure to verify and confirm those once those milestones have been achieved. Obviously, we will be without communication to the spacecraft at that time. So once we regain communication, we will make sure to find out those numbers and report those to you.
So interior view of the spacecraft here, and you can see the astronauts doing a little bit of stuff and getting geared up for what they need to do on the far side. They're going to be taking more pictures and doing all that kind of stuff as well, but they will be basically, we're getting a few shots as they configure the cabin. Just in case, there's an issue while they're on the far side, they pretty much have to be ready to respond because mission control really can't look after them. That's basically a very long, nervous coffee break for all the mission controllers back in Houston. Let's see. I just want to check to see if they've updated the times that we will be getting all of these things, because it's been a little surprising. Usually the times for stuff like this is known pretty far in advance, and yet for whatever reason, that hasn't been the case here. Now of course, the trajectory changes a little bit as they go away from the plan or whatever. It's never exactly perfect, but still, usually the timing should be a little bit better. I'll leave you with mission control for a second, and I'll come back with the new stuff. Okay, so we have a little bit of stuff here. Here we go. Some of the events that are coming up, and so 6:44 is still the predicted loss of communication time as the crew gets behind the moon.
Targeting package, the crew is now in their discussion of the limb. See the limb of the moon, that illuminated part. Currently at the windows taking photos and making annotations are Victor Glover and Christina Cook. We are expecting loss of signal in about 13 minutes. We will regain that signal with the crew about 40 minutes later.
Okay, and so it looks like we will.
Worth mentioning that this day marks the first time in more than 50 years that humans will observe the moon directly, a critical opportunity to practice how lunar science will be conducted during future Artemis missions.
I don't know what that meant. I observed the moon directly yesterday with my eyes. Anyway, I guess they're talking about from spacecraft, but still. So yeah, we're looking at about 6:42. We'll lose communication, and that's where we'll see that Earth set. Then just after 7, the Artemis crew will make its closest approach to the moon, and then shortly after that reach its maximum distance from the Earth, exceeding the Apollo 13 record that was set back in 1970 or 1960. Apollo 13 was the record in 1970. Their wake-up crew call today came from astronaut Jim Lovell, commander of Apollo 13, who up until this point is the living record holder of the distance, and he happily passed the torch on to the Artemis astronauts preemptively as part of their wake-up today. So that was pretty cool. This is what I really wanted to check on, the predicted acquisition of signal, 7:25. It'll actually be about 7:20 now, it looks like. But the eclipse doesn't happen for an hour after that. And then about an hour after the sun is eclipsed, that's when the lunar observation period will conclude. However, that's just the official thing. I can't imagine that these people are going to stop looking at the moon just because the timeline says so, right? So we'll be here for a little while checking things out. As you can see from this live view from the exterior, we're getting close to the moon. In fact, it is a very close view. We're definitely down into the, here, let me move this view a little bit so that we're not quite, there we go. Maybe a little bit better like that. I don't want to have me block the view. We're getting down into a crescent phase.
Minutes till the LOS. We'll take a snappy sit rep from the cabin if you have one.
Okay, Jenny, that came, we missed most of that, but just a 10-minute warning, is that what you're saying?
10-minute warning for the LOS, and I'll take a quick sit rep from the cabin, please.
All right, cabin is still full of excitement. We've got Christina in window 2, Ike in Victor in window 3. Reed's actually been trying to get some images out of the docking tunnel. We can see the Earth and the moon and part of the moon out of the docking tunnel, which is pretty good. And I'm just grabbing some footage right now with our interior cameras.
Copy, Jeremy. We'd like to know what camera Reed is using and also the status of window 1. Looks like there might be a shroud removed.
So you're hearing the voices there of Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen and his backup, Jenny Gibbons, who is acting as Capcom, capsule communicator for the mission right now. And they've been having trouble with the moon or the Earth is really bright, and they had to block out the moon, the Earth, the sun, depending on what they're taking images of. And so they're literally putting T-shirts over top of the windows, and that's giving them some issues with windows fogging up and stuff like that. So there's a few glitches. I won't say glitches, but things that aren't going as smoothly as expected. That's the purpose of this mission, is to figure out all of these procedures in advance when you don't have the pressure of a moon landing coming up or anything like that. That'll happen on Artemis 4. Artemis 3 will test the moon landers in Earth orbit to make sure that they get everything shaken out before they go off as well. Oh, and there you've got sorry, I'm just listening to a thing here. Here we go. Okay, so there you see the Earth and the moon. That's amazing. There's us. Okay, there we go. There is the moon in the front and the Earth in the background, and you can see how close they're getting. We're getting into the situation where the Earth will set behind that view of the moon. One of the things the crew will be doing when they're going around the far side, which is also pretty dark right now, is they're looking for lunar impact flashes. So remember how I said stuff doesn't hit the moon very much anymore? Well, big stuff doesn't hit the moon very much anymore. Little stuff is still out there all over the place, and it hits the Earth, the moon, all the time. If you've ever seen a falling star, a shooting star, that's literally a sand grain sized asteroid crashing into Earth and burning up in the atmosphere. Every once in a while, you get a bigger one. The last couple of weeks, we've seen a bunch of bolides, or fireballs, they're called, where you can see it in broad daylight, and some pieces come down, some meteorites and things like that. So there's some of that out there. The moon gets hit with that all the time, and there's no atmosphere. So there should be a whole bunch of flashes happening over the course of a lunar day, where you can actually see flashes of light. These have been detected from Earth in just amateur telescopes. If there's a project going where you can just point your telescope at the moon, run video continuously, and then use a piece of software to search through all the frames to see if you detected any lunar impacts. There's a lot more than we thought there were. So the crew isn't going to be in a perfect position to detect these, and there's actually an amateur organization that is observing at the same time. Unfortunately for us in North America, this time that they're going around the moon is not above our horizon, so we can't see it. But there's folks in Europe, in Asia, Africa, Australia, all those areas sort of will have a view of the moon, and they'll be watching to see if they can detect the same flashes. Now, of course, most of the moon that the crew is seeing is on the far side of the moon, can't be seen from Earth, but there is a narrow swath of darkness visible from the Earth that the crew will also see. So that's something that I don't think happened during the Apollo era. Someone in a backyard with a telescope being able to work on a joint science project with astronauts going around the moon. I really wish it was happening when we could see it, because I would be all over that. But this is the kind of world we live in today, where this kind of option for citizen science is there. There are lots of astronomy and space related projects that you can get involved in as long as you've got a computer and an internet connection. You don't even need a telescope in some cases. You can just look at the images that come from various other telescopes. Even though I'm sure there's lots of AI tools being developed to do a lot of astronomy research and like finding new things and stuff like that, the human eye and brain is still unmatched in its ability to look at something and say, that's weird. And that's where science comes from. That's where discoveries are made. So that's something that you can definitely check out. Just Google citizen science and you will find so many things that you can get involved with. And not just astronomy. There are tracking birds and tracking the locations of animals in the area. And there's so much stuff. And it depends not on one expert with a lot of tools, but on a whole bunch of people with enthusiasm and a cell phone. And that's usually the extent of it. So I really am liking this picture here. And I know they're getting ready to disappear into the eclipse here behind the sun. Oh, behind the Earth, pardon me. There's something coming down from the crew, so let's switch to that.
Poignant
Wow.
words from NASA astronaut Victor Glover, and a little bit of a love letter from the other side of the moon all the way to Earth. Glover touching on the teachings of Jesus, including to love your neighbor as yourself. We are now less than 3 minutes away from loss of signal with the Orion astronauts.
Okay, sorry, I think you might have missed
The
some of
Artemis
the
2
audio
crew
there.
will be out of signal for about 40 minutes as they are on the other side of the moon,
Just bring that down for a
continuing
second.
their work
But
photographing the lunar surface.
I think that they made some good choices on astronauts. Victor Glover is a poet. Every description he's made of things that he sees, every emotional moment that he conveys just comes across like poetry. It's just amazing. Go to the NASA sites, go to the live broadcasts, rewind them, and just listen to some of the stuff he has to say, because there are so many great nuggets there. Or you can go to the NASA's Artemis multimedia site, and that has some of the downlinked videos and things like that. The Canadian Space Agency has a bunch of Jeremy's stuff as well, and he's got some really great words of his experiences, his raw enthusiasm and excitement of being in space, and just some of the poignant words of the perspective change you get. Now look at that. There we have the moon about to eclipse the Earth about to set, and I kind of don't have words. Like, we have about a minute and a half until loss of signal, and then we will be out of communications for about 40 minutes. Wow, look at that. Now we're going to get the high res version once they come around the horn and give us the the download over the next day or so, and I'm sure that and that's loss of signal. Oh no, not quite. As you get close to the edge of the moon, the radio waves actually have to skim along the moon, and you get some drop in and drop out and stuff like that. We may get intermittent views back, but that could be the, oh, there we go. Look at that. Oh, yeah. That's amazing. Everybody you've ever heard of is on that little spot that's about to be blocked out by the moon. Now, they'll be taking great pictures of this, and so there will be so many poster-worthy images. I can't wait to see the final high-res view of this. It's going to be the image of the decade, I'm sure, just because it is. Look at that. I mean, wow. It gives you a sense of perspective. Everything that we see on the news and online and stuff like that, it all happens on that tiny little blue marble that only looks big because we're standing on it, and really isn't that big of a deal in the cosmic scheme of things. What will this is the simulation of Orion, and the Earth has gone behind the moon. All we'll have is this simulation of them for the next 40 minutes or so. So let's bring them back here. Why are we not getting that audio? Yeah, earlier on, there was a pretty neat back and forth between I call it the nerd room. It's basically, it's not mission control. It's all the scientists. They're just down the hall. They have their own room and they can ask the Capcom to ask questions, but they were going back and forth on getting the descriptions from the astronauts of what they were seeing, and then they were asking back, okay, well, how about over here where this crater comes up against that crater? What's the color like? And it would just be like the scientists being there. And there was a whole bunch of, I don't know if they're discoveries, but certainly a bunch of unexpected things in terms of the colors on the moon. We look at the pictures of the moon, we look at the, a picture like this, and it looks gray. And yeah, sure, there's light gray and dark gray and white and black. But when you look at the moon up close, there's actually quite a bit of color there, and the color reveals the geology. So there's blues and there's browns and there's even green, which I was surprised by. And also all this subtle coloring that you don't see because it's just so bright for us here on the Earth against a dark sky. But when you're there and your eyes adapt to that brightness, you must have just a great view. Oh, here we have the Apollo versions. Yeah, they're just talking a little bit about all the different things that they use to communicate with the crew and stuff like that. Fill in a little bit of time, I guess. So we'll come back. I'll monitor that and we'll come back when it's got some good stuff. But yeah, the moon is actually quite colorful when you look at it in detail. And that's what the crew is able to do that you just can't get a good view. Yeah, who doesn't love a good nerd room? Hey, Maya, totally. You and I would be in that room. I'd rather be there than mission control myself, because yeah, that's where the enthusiasm is. And Hollis, yeah, the enthusiasm, no problem. It's great to be able to share this. Quite frankly, even if nobody was watching this, I would be doing this anyway, just watching this and getting excited. So might as well share it with people. And it's way more fun to share excitement like this. I was not old enough for any of the Apollo stuff. I was apparently born like halfway through the Apollo. I think Apollo 14 or Apollo 15 happened after I was born. But I mean, I was so young. I don't remember any of that stuff. But I grew up listening to a record album that my dad had. It was like a double album set, like vinyl for the kids these days. And it had a little picture book in it. And it was some of the snippets of the mission control. It was like, that's the only way you could get like a YouTube video equivalent experience back in the 70s, was this record album with this picture thing. And I wore that thing out. In fact, I was just over at my parents' this weekend, and Dad gave it to me because I mentioned it on the last broadcast. So I've got this record album upstairs. And after this is all over, I'm going to sit down and listen to that again just for old time's sake. But I didn't get a chance to participate in any of that stuff. I've just grown up knowing that humanity went to the moon, but we're not going anymore. And yeah, there's space stuff, and yeah, space shuttle and the space station, and there's cool things happening and robots to Mars and stuff. But I mean, the space station only gets 400 kilometers away from the Earth. While it's doing great stuff and while it's important, it's like I've driven farther than that for a weekend getaway. You know what I mean? The distance just isn't there. Here, we're going to another world. And even though we're not landing, we're not doing that yet, the idea of exploring a whole different world has an allure to it that just doesn't, we haven't seen in some of the earlier, the more recent space programs. Although, I mean, I don't want to, it sounds like I'm dissing the space station. There's a whole bunch of really amazing stuff that has happened and is happening on the space station. We'll have a Canadian on board the space station again pretty soon. Josh Kutrick's mission is scheduled for next year now. And so he'll be up there for 6 months again. And everybody remembers Chris Hadfield and his epic time on the space station. He set the bar for NASA communications, I think, because he did a live concert with Bare Naked Ladies from space. I mean, nobody else has done that. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with the moon mission going on. Let's let's listen in to one of the mission controllers here.
Oh, no kidding. It has been so cool to hear you communicating directly with the crew. And I know that you have been preparing for this for years, so I am so excited for you and for your team. So just to get into that background a little bit, tell me about your background and what you've been doing on console.
My background is as a field geologist. Actually, I studied impact cratering in the field for my PhD, so all these descriptions of impact craters have me just absolutely swooning. How I got into this, though, is, during my PhD, I got an internship at NASA and ultimately never left to integrate science into flight operations. So we developed the Science Officer Console, for which this is the first mission we're supporting. We developed the Science Evaluation Room that's right upstairs, and so it's so gratifying to see this operation structure come to fruition, especially on a day like today.
I would have to imagine so. And we've got a great view of the science evaluation room right now. Is there anything that has stood out to your team so far?
Absolutely. So as you might have heard in some of the press briefings and content that we've been putting out, color and albedo were really exciting targets for us. We've heard several amazing color descriptions so far. Just to highlight maybe one of them, we heard about greenish and brownish hues near Aristarchus, which is actually a feature that we can see here from the near side. And those greenish hues could actually tell us something about the volcanic evolution of that area. So you can bet that the science team is going to be prioritizing downlinking those images and the crew audio that we didn't hear that went into those recordings to learn a little bit more.
Wow, that is fascinating. I was hearing those colors and very interested just from a personal standpoint, because looking at the moon from, 250,000 miles away, we don't see green or brown. So just hearing that, them being so close and getting to see that, fascinating, and I know very exciting for you. So what are you expecting to see in the upcoming portion of the flyby?
The upcoming portion is actually going to be really exciting. So right now, as we speak, while folks in the room are kind of taking their stretch breaks and everything, the crew are still hard at work. They still have targets to image and describe during this LOS. But when we come out, the first thing, of course, we're going to hear about is Earthrise. We're really looking forward to hearing about the crew's experience with something that we can connect with and that, Apollo 8 brought us such amazing images from. But then we start to get into describing the Terminator, as well as looking for things like lofted dust, which tell us about the modern lunar environment. Then the vehicle's going to orient away from the moon for an hour and then pivot back for the eclipse observations, which is a whole different set of science observations that we're really looking forward to.
It's kind of nice that the crew will get a little break in there, because they have been hitting it hard today with photos and videos and annotations. What are you hoping that the crew sees coming up? Is it that lunar dust?
Oh my goodness, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, we've already gotten such great descriptions. I mean, the Terminator seems to just be like one of their favorite things to look at and describe. So I feel like, that was something we were looking forward to. I feel like we've really got some great descriptions. So absolutely, I'm looking to the human moment of Earthrise. Lofted dust is an exciting one, and lofted dust will be a target for them in the right around the time of Earthrise, but again in the eclipse period. So I'm really looking forward to seeing. I mean, they've already highlighted just in the course of their flyby so far how the moon has changed, and this is going to be even more dramatic change to go from their end of this kind of lunar illuminated piece of the flyby into the eclipse time frame. And I can tell you they're going to be experiencing a very different moon during that time, and I can't wait to hear what their observations are.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating, and what a privilege that we get to do that on this mission, because that's not always the case. If we had launched on a different day other than April 1st or 2nd, we wouldn't have gotten to see that eclipse. Is that right?
That's correct. April 1st and 2nd. I will say, I was asked a lot in the weeks leading up to the launch, well, what's your favorite day? And my answer truly was, there is no bad day to launch to the moon. We were going to get great science out of it no matter what, but it's a really neat opportunity to, bring the sun into the picture, bring different planetary bodies into the picture while still literally keeping the moon in center stage.
Fascinating. So what differences are we looking for at each site? We're hearing a lot of different terms. We're looking at craters. We're looking at mare. What are the differences that you're hoping to see?
We do have, as you highlight, kind of different prompts for each target. That's what they're looking at in their lunar targeting plan, which I know you've been showing. And we have even different prompts for the person with the really long lens on the camera versus the people with the unaided eye. And you've heard the crew talk about, oh my goodness, when I go from one to the other, I can really detect different nuances. And that's something that we experienced in simulations, but hearing them actually, see it for real has been really gratifying. But we're looking looking for different things based on the target. Sometimes we're looking for color, sometimes we're looking for texture. For the Terminator, we're looking at kind of what texture and morphologies pop out to you and what kind of diversity you see along the Terminator. You've heard, Victor especially make some comments about future impacts for exploration. So already I think that their descriptions in this first part of the flyby have told us something scientifically, but also about future surface missions.
Well, it was so interesting to hear Victor talking about he was imagining in his mind's eye being down on the surface and walking around. That was very cool to hear. And when we're thinking about targets, I know some of them are determined based on the launch day because that determines the lunar illumination. So the ones that we're looking at today, how and why were these selected?
Such
Of the Earth, you got atmospheric air glow.
At the heart of some of our really highest priority science questions, illumination conditions is a big one, right? So of course we need the targets that we're interested on the lunar feature to be illuminated by the sun in order to view them, but the timing in which they see them during the flyby enables us to ask different questions. So you heard in the pre-flyby crew conference talking about, well, the same pair, Reed and Jeremy, will get to actually look at Glushko crater twice, and that looking at it from different illumination angles allows us to understand that feature better and connect color and albedo with topography and morphology. Then you have other craters where you want to look at it with the sun shining on it obliquely versus straight on, and that tells you something different about the scientific objective that drove the target being on the targeting plan in the first place.
We've talked a little bit with the viewers today about what the crew is able to capture in this short time frame of those craters in different lighting conditions. Could take years for something robotic to be able to do based on attitude maneuvers and where the sun is at. So can you just talk a little bit about the importance of having both the robotic operation and having the crew?
Absolutely. We definitely don't want to minimize the impact of orbiting spacecraft. Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is the one that's often referenced. Data from LRO and its payloads have really been instrumental in getting us, frankly, to this point for Artemis II and future missions. But the human experience, the crew observations that we've already been hearing about, it is such a perfect complement to the orbiting spacecraft data because they are able to have this unique perspective. They are far enough away where they can make these contextual observations. You've already heard it. How many times have we heard the crew and their science sit reps say, if I track this feature from all the way up here in the northern hemisphere down to the southern hemisphere, here are comparisons I can make. That right there is not something we had the ability to do with the Apollo missions, and it allows just literally in the blink of an eye to synthesize observations that it would take, a really significant effort to coordinate with different orbiting platforms, and they're making it like that.
Wow. It has been very, very exciting to hear all of their calls so far. And so I've heard they were able to capture every single target so far too. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. And I think it's important also to remember that, and I know the science team is anxiously awaiting this, we've been hearing from the crew members who are not at the forward windows, right? Those crew who are, really in the thick of the observations, they are recording minutes-long observations per target on their crew tablets. We will be getting those down starting here in a couple hours, and that's going to contain really meaty science information that we haven't heard live yet, and that's going to form the basis of my conversation with them tomorrow morning, where we're going to have a really deep dive into the science and absolutely nerd out about what they were able to do today. One of the most gratifying things for me today is hearing multiple crew members say, thank you for putting the discussion times in the targeting plan, because when we have had the ability to put multiple brains on a problem, we have elevated each other. And I'm looking forward to them, sleeping on it overnight and then us actually being able to really, truly have an elevated science discourse tomorrow.
Well, we're looking forward to it too, and I cannot wait to hear everything that you guys get to learn overnight from some of those audio recordings and just everything that they'll be able to share tomorrow. So, Kelsey, I know you are very busy. You've done a great job today, and thank you so much for joining us for this interview.
Thanks for having me. It's such an exciting day.
So that's pretty cool. Kelsey is one of the three Capcoms, along with Jenny Gibbons. And to be honest, I don't know the third one because it always happens when I'm sleeping. I kind of feel bad about that. But as you heard, they will be nerding out tonight and tomorrow as those images start to come down a couple of hours from now. So after the spacecraft reappears and they do a little bit more observation, then the focus will switch to getting that data down. But listening to some of the descriptions earlier in the day today, they have, they're looking at a particular area, and then as they move, they're getting a different angle of sunlight on it, and it starts to look different. And the things that become visible, they're doing everything from rating which area of the moon is darkest and brightest, to looking at different color variations, to looking at the contact area between the Oriental Basin, that big sort of bullseye we were talking about on the side of the moon, and the areas around it. And even just from the discussion on board, they're coming up with theories of, well, how the, for lack of a better term, how that impacts our ideas of the formation and history of the moon. I mean, we don't know for sure how the moon formed. We believe that the moon originally formed when a Mars-sized object collided with the Earth and basically pulverized both objects, and a bunch of material came off and coalesced into the moon while the rest of it remained as the Earth. That's not for sure, though. It's the best theory that we have that seems to match the Apollo rock samples and things like that. The moon is very similar to the Earth compositionally, much more similar than Mars, for example. And we think that that's because of that shared history. So these kinds of observations can really help to refine that and help us understand those big questions, like where did it come from? I think it's pretty cool. So many exciting things happening. There's a lot of, I don't know if you're having any internet troubles, but as far as I can tell, there's something over 1 million people watching the YouTube thread, or the YouTube channel right now. Not mine, but the NASA one. But it's also streaming through, at first I thought it was just Amazon Prime, but it's also on Netflix. Everybody is covering this now. Let's see, HBO Max, Netflix, YouTube, Peacock, Prime Video, and of course on NASA Plus, which is their NASA TV, YouTube kind of thing. There's a lot of interest. We did have some really interesting questions come in via email to me, and also some of the media. We had some people having the misconception that, well, I thought we were landing. Why aren't they landing? As you probably know, Artemis 2 is a mission designed to test out the spacecraft, not to land on the moon. And so we go around the moon, but if you actually stopped at the moon and even went into orbit, you'd have to know that your spacecraft's going to work properly. You have to know that the engine will work again so that you can come home. The trajectory that they're on right now is what's called a free return trajectory, because it doesn't make you use the engines to come home. You basically just go around the moon, and the gravity of the moon turns you back and throws you back at the Earth, and then you just tweak your course a little bit and you come into the Earth. So that's a pretty helpful bit of gravitational stuff. Oh yes, even the simulator doesn't work because they have lost signal. They're actually getting live information from the spacecraft, and unfortunately, I bet they didn't even think about this. When that signal stops, you don't get the information anymore. Maybe the sim is still occupying. I'm not sure. But the Earth just went around the side here, and there's this view of that's the view that they'll have from the spacecraft, and they're looking largely at the dark side now, monitoring for those impact flashes, but also looking at the bright areas as well. There we go. There's a lot of overlap here. There we go. Okay, there we go. So during this time when we can't talk to the crew, or hear from the crew and can't get the live images back, and we can't downlink the high resolution images, essentially it's a waiting game. We have to wait, let's see, what time are we at now? There we go. Yeah, so we're probably looking another 15 minutes to before we get acquisition of signal, and that's when we'll see that Earthrise. So a little bit before that, you already saw it, that I've got there's the signal coming back from the spacecraft. Loss of signal, nothing there, but we'll cut to that just before time, because I don't want to miss that first sight of the Earth rising over the moon. And yeah, the Earthrise will be quite the time. It's kind of amazing that, you know, today is the 6th of April. On March the 30th, I still wasn't sure that this mission was going to go ahead in April at all. There were, you know, things looked okay, but it could have run into another problem like they did in March, like they did in February. And it was only 6 days ago that Jeremy was just putting on the orange poopy suit and getting ready to fly. It was surreal covering the launch because, you know, I've done countdowns a number of times, and often they end before the rocket launches. But, you know, we saw the crew walk out, and it was a nice day. And some of these are just captures from NASA TV along the time that I was doing while I was doing the broadcast, just to get a sense of there's Commander Reed Wiseman giving us the thumbs up. They're just about to get into the spacecraft. There's Jeremy over there just putting his helmet down so he can get ready to hook up. And it was, again, you know, here's 4 hours before launch. Still, you don't know if things are going to go. The spacecraft is fueled, but there could be a problem. There was, you know, the weather looked good, but it was 80%, so that's 20%, maybe not. Then they closed the hatch. Things started to get a little more real. Usually you don't bolt that hatch down unless you're pretty sure things are going to work. And I mean, there was nothing indicating that there'd be any problem, but NASA has not been as forthcoming as it has in previous eras, shall we say. So, like, we didn't get all the live mission control chatter, and we didn't get to hear everything in real time like we used to. So you never sort of know what's going on. And then they launched. And even when the engines had started with 6 seconds ready to go, I was still thinking something could delay it. It just didn't seem like it was real. And then those solid rocket boosters ignite, and those things you just can't. Oh, you guys are not seeing. Oh, thank you. Thanks, James. Let me find the right button. Oh, man. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. Let's go back here and let's see, what am I doing here? Is that better? Hopefully now. Yeah. So what we've got, yeah, Jeremy, you know, going through the suit up procedure, and just some of these shots of like the crew walk out, and it all just seemed very, very surreal until they got into that spacecraft and were ready to go. And, you know, the launch was a flawless launch. Everything went so good, it was kind of scary. And then, you know, suddenly we're in space and going around the Earth. And that was actually a really cool time because there was all this chatter about, well, will we be able to see the Artemis spacecraft in orbit before it goes to the moon, or will we be able to see it on the way to the moon, like with the eye, or with binoculars or a telescope? Because of the positioning, it's really hard to do from Canada. It's just too far south. It barely gets above the southern horizon, and you needed binoculars to see it the first day, and then after that, it was well into telescope visibility because it was too far away, which is a little bit unfortunate. However, you know, NASA provided all the trajectory stuff, and we were able to, I used a telescope from Chile that is available sort of remotely, and I got pictures of it. A friend of mine, Martin Radcliffe, who's down in Utah, imaged it with a 6-inch telescope from his backyard. And, you know, that's not a massive telescope. That's kind of a typical backyard, reasonable setup kind of thing. Now, he's a very experienced astrophotographer, but the idea that you can see a spacecraft on the way to the moon, that just blew me away. I was thrilled to get that image because I felt like I was participating. And then we're getting pictures like this back. Oh, here's Jeremy looking back at the Earth, looking back at all of us, and getting a view of that. And then we start getting in to these shots of the moon. I'll move this over here. And you know, the shots of the moon, this first one that came out, people were like, oh, well, that just looks like the picture of the moon that I took with my cell phone just yesterday. And yeah, you can get some amazing shots of the moon from Earth with a cell phone. If you haven't tried it before, just go out, especially if you've got a newer, like the last 3 or 4 years, your phone, if it's from the last 3 or 4 years, it has so much good auto in it that it can figure out how to take a great exposure of the moon. And so you can see the craters, you can see the dark Maria area and stuff like that. But here the angle is different because here we're seeing around onto the far side of the moon. This is the far side over here. This big bullseye here, this is the Oriental Basin we were talking about, and that they've been using a lot as a reference point. From our point of view, it's right on the edge of the moon, right between what we can see from Earth and what's on the far side that we can never see. And that the moon wiggles a little bit as it goes around, so we can sometimes peek a little bit more around one side or the other. So there are times where we get a slightly better view of this, but we never see it from above like this. And then, like here it is, they're literally right above it, essentially, and you get to see the entire thing. And then if we zoom in a little bit, there's so much amazing detail in this kind of thing. And yet, it also kind of looks like the pictures that I take with my telescope from my backyard on a really good night when I get a good view where the air is nice and steady and stuff like that. But I'm never seeing this side of the moon. Now, a little earlier, Brian asked, does the far side of the moon get hit more? Because if we look back here, here's the near side that's facing us, and it's got all these dark areas, the Maria. And here's the far side, almost no Maria, it's all craters. So we don't think it gets hit more, believe it or not, because although one side is facing in towards the Earth and one side is facing out, that doesn't make that big of a... Oh, Jeremy's got a cool little moment coming up here, so we're just going to switch over. I'll come back to your question, Brian, because I don't want to lose it. Does he got it? Oh, okay. So one of the NASA channels that I'm monitoring is playing this video, but it's not one. I'm just seeing it on my phone here. Okay, we'll bring you that in a second. Sorry about that. So yeah, the near side of the moon, which is all covered with these Maria, the crust there is actually thinner. We think because the moon, if it formed from this impact, it was certainly molten for a period of time. It was just like lava, basically, and the outside touching space would solidify. But because it was so close to the Earth, the heavy stuff inside, like the molten iron and stuff, actually got pulled slightly closer to the Earth. So the center of the moon is not in the center. It's offset towards the Earth. So the crust on this side is thinner. So when an impact hits here, it can punch through the crust and let the lava out to flood it. On this side, the far side, the crust is thicker because the core of the moon sagged away from that side, you know, towards the Earth, away from the far side. And so there the crust is thicker and the impacts have not been big enough to get all the way through that to let the lava out. So it's not so much that there have been more impacts on one side or the other. It's just that all the impacts on this side were largely erased when those lava floods happened. And the ones on this side have remained since before that era. Now we're pretty sure that after the Maria were formed 3.9-ish, 3.8 to 4 billion years ago, there hasn't been a lot of heavy cratering because there's not a whole lot of craters on top of the Maria. There's only a few bright ones, these ones that are, really, really fresh looking. So this is why we talk about in the solar system, there was the period of heavy bombardment when every solid surface was getting the stuffing knocked out of it by asteroids colliding. That's basically the process that the planets sort of grew. If you took a snowball, here's a Winnipeg example that my local friends will appreciate. You take a snowball and you stick it there and you throw other snowballs at it and they'll stick, and you wind up getting a big snowball. Or you take a snowball and you roll it in the snow and it turns into a bigger thing. That's pretty much an analog of how the solar system formed, except instead of you rolling the snowball, gravity is just pulling things together, and as things move around, orbiting around the sun, pieces all get stuck together, and you wind up growing these planets. I'm pretty sure it's more complicated than that. I don't think that'll get me a PhD for that explanation, but the basic idea is sound. Most of that happened, most of the pieces that were going to hit things have already hit things. And there's still a few leftovers floating around out there, all the meteors, the occasional asteroid that comes closer, things like that. But most of that material has been used up. When we look at other solar systems out there, we actually see clouds of dust around their star where the planets are still forming. But our solar system is pretty clean. Although, let's see if I can bring you one of these pictures here. There was a really cool shot of the Earth just a couple of days ago. And let me see if I can bring this to you here. How can I do this? Let's see, we'll go back to our thing here. Yeah, this is where I envy some of my colleagues that have a crew of 4 people working on their podcast. We're working on that too, though. So let's see. I'll insert this picture now. There it is. And now, okay. And I'm just going to move this out of the way. We're in loss of signal, so it doesn't really matter right now. Here is a shot of the Earth that came out, I think, on day 2. And it was, well, first of all, it's a beautiful picture. It's upside down. The North Pole is down at the bottom here, but that doesn't really matter. This is the daylight part of the moon. It's actually a thin crescent lit up by the sun. This is the dark side of the moon, or the dark side of the Earth, pardon me. So how can we see it? Well, it's facing a full moon. The full moon's light is so bright that it lights up the whole dark side of the planet here. There's also a little reflection from inside the window of the spacecraft, where I think Reed Wiseman took this picture with the just holding his camera up to the window. And down over here in the lower right, are you seeing my cursor? Yeah, there we go. Down over there, that's the planet Venus. But look at this sort of glow here. That's not just glare from the camera. That is dust in the plane of the solar system. That is the dust that, when it crashes into the Earth, makes meteors. And if we could see the whole solar system, there's basically a plane of dust that the planets are all moving around it. It's all very, very small bits, but that dust is there. And you can actually see that dust glowing in the sky, actually right about, I guess 2 weeks ago would have been better when there was no moon in the sky, as what's called the zodiacal light. It's basically a glow that kind of looks like the glow of twilight, but anyway, it's the illuminated dust from within our solar system. So we still have that in our solar system. Our solar system is technically not finished forming because every day 20,000 tons of dust hits the Earth. And luckily it all burns up in the atmosphere, or most of it does. But occasionally you see these bright fireballs like we've seen around the last couple of weeks or so. Springtime, for whatever reason, there seems to be an increase in the number of these bright fireballs. And that's that formation process still going on. And we can see images from Artemis that sort of relate to that whole same thing. Okay, let me just check to make sure we're not missing anything here. They keep repeating the same little bits on NASA TV, so I won't have you listen to that over and over again. But basically, yeah, we're waiting for acquisition of signal in another few minutes. Round about coming up in the next couple of minutes, I guess. We'll bring back our live view, and there's the mission controller team all working hard. I'm surprised there's nobody walking in with takeout or something like that. It's a long shift, and of course you've got to adapt your sleep schedule to whatever the mission is based on the launch and so on. So it's one of those things that you don't just go into work and yeah, it's an exciting day because we're going around the moon. You've been preparing for, well, at this point for months, adjusting your sleep schedule and then readjusting it when the mission gets delayed. Nerd room.
And mission special.
I think that's one of the cooler things is the emotional impact, because there's a lot of emotional impact in some of the descriptions that we're getting. Oh, we are just getting the spacecraft. Where are you? There we are. So that's the Earth in the background. The dark side of the moon is between us and it must have just come out from there. So they're switching back and forth here. Let's go back to this view. This is cutting in and out, but the lunar limb, the edge of the moon, must be just right about there, right about here, sorry. And the Earth is, okay, that should be stable now. Nope, okay. Cutting in and out a little bit as they come around the edge of the moon, you get all sorts of weird bouncing
We're in
effects.
the Artemis Mission Control Room at Johnson Space Center, getting our preliminary contact with Orion, that acquisition of signal coming after a 40-minute loss of signal, during which the crew was flying behind the moon, out of contact with anyone on Earth.
So the aliens did not eat them. So I don't know how many of you lost a bet on that, but that's, the aliens didn't eat them. Oh, hey, Kim, nice to see you guys. You and Kev out doing well, I hope. It's, I don't know how late we'll be staying up, but I thought I'd be broadcasting till about 8:30 because that's when the flyby sort of shuts down. But now we're going to be getting pictures back in the couple of hours after that. So I don't know if I'll stay live and start putting them there, or I'll just post the pictures to the event page. I'm not quite sure. We'll see what happens. At some point, I'm going to have to eat something, but you can see the image is still coming in a little bit jaggy there with the view. Let's zoom in a bit.
The crescent that you see is Earth, over 252,000 miles away.
Sweet. 401,000 kilometers and change.
With this transit complete, lunar flyby continues, but Orion has also technically begun its journey home.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the free return trajectory. Man, I have trouble with that word. Trajectory. Is that no engines required to come back. The gravity just slingshots you back. And that's why this was chosen, because you wind up with no risk, essentially. No matter what you do, you're coming back home, even if the engine fails or whatever, right? So as a first test of the spacecraft, that's actually a really good way to do it. There were enough risks on this mission already in terms of, flying this gigantic rocket with humans on it the first time, having the Orion spacecraft, maneuvering and docking. I mean, we saw a bunch of problems with previous spacecraft with their thrusters and things like that. There was the Starliner spacecraft that, had some thruster problems, and its astronauts were supposed to go to the space station for 9 days, and they wound up spending like 260 days in space because the spacecraft wasn't considered safe. You don't want that to happen when you're going out to the moon. When you're on the space station, you're 15 minutes from splashdown if you need to evacuate quickly. Well, maybe half an hour. But from the moon, you got 4-day trip no matter what. So there is no quick escape or rescue. So taking things easy, I think, is perfectly valid. Let's see here if they've got any. Ooh, what's this? Is that a new picture? No, it's not a new picture. Boo Warrens.
Houston, we have you the same, and it is so great to hear from Earth again. To Asia, Africa, and Oceania, we are looking back at you. We hear you can look up and see the moon right now. We see you too. When we burned this burn towards the moon, I said that we do not leave Earth, but we choose it. And that is true. We will explore, we will build ships, we will visit again. We will construct science outposts, we will drive rovers, we will do radio astronomy, we will found companies, we will bolster industry, we will inspire. But ultimately, we will always choose Earth. We will always choose each other.
Integrity from Earth, our single system, fragile and interconnected. We copy. Those of us that can are looking back.
A nice sentiment there from Christina Cook the other mission specialist, along with Jeremy Hansen on the Artemis 2 mission. So we have full communication now with the Artemis crew, and will again all the way through until what's called entry interface in about 4 days, where they come back into the Earth's atmosphere and they go through that fiery re-entry, and that disrupts communications for another couple of minutes. They may not actually have as much of an issue with that as before, certainly not as they did in the Apollo days, because now there are satellites up above that can look down on them and communicate with them. But there's always usually a period where the crew is a little bit too busy to bother chatting with us.
With the astronauts aboard. We do not leave Earth, we choose it. The translunar injection burn served as not only what put them on this trajectory to fly around the moon, but what also committed them to splashing down in the Pacific Ocean on flight day 10.
So yeah, again, a situation where the one engine burn did all of the things that was needed. Got the spacecraft on ready for its flyby, and also got it headed for home. So they're going to be looking at the moon again for a little while. And actually, let's see if we can switch over to the... oh, we're starting to get some... Let's see. There we go. We're starting to get... Here, let me just adjust the zoom of this. Everything keeps resizing as it resets, of course. All right. So there is our situation. The spacecraft has come around the moon. You can see the edge of the moon there, the dark side of the moon on the right. In the circle there is the Earth. The crescent of the Earth is just a little bit smaller than that circle, so that gives you a sense of the size. And the spacecraft is rotated around so that the windows are facing towards the moon and the Earth. They can still see a little bit of bright part of the moon, a bright part of the there we go. Yeah, you can't really see it on that view. Let me see if I can adjust this. No, it doesn't want to just do it for me. Okay, well, that's fine. So there's still just a thin crescent on the right side of the moon that's just off of the screen here that the astronauts would be able to see, but they're mostly looking at the darkened side of the moon and, of course, looking at the Earth. I imagine that seeing the Earth rise over the dark limb of the moon, that's the thing that's different here. In the Apollo 8 image, the moon was lit up and then the Earth was appearing above that. Here, it will be black, and then suddenly the Earth will start to appear and rise up over the edge of the moon. So I'm really looking forward to I'm sure they shot video, and if not, some really high-res pictures of that, because that is going to be, like I say, one of the iconic images of this mission and probably of the decade. Yeah, time for supper. James, thanks for sticking with us, and go have something to eat. And we'll be hanging out here for a little bit because I want to see what pictures they managed to get back on a timely fashion. In about half an hour, they'll be starting to watch the solar eclipse, which the gigantic moon will block out the sun. They'll have to wear eclipse glasses for the first couple of minutes when the moon is partially eclipsing the moon, just like you and me have to do when there's an eclipse here on the Earth. In fact, it's even worse for them because they don't have the atmosphere to block their view. But I guess they have windows that will block some of the harmful rays. Anyway, they have eclipse glasses that they'll wear for the first couple of minutes, and then they'll see the corona of the sun briefly, and then the big moon will block it, and then eventually it will pop out on the other side. So it'll be a very disjointed eclipse compared to the ones we get here on Earth. Hey, Garrett, nice to see you. Yeah, totally, hey? Oh, man. So Garrett and I were in a band together, and we kept trying to get the singer to do Tom Sawyer with us. She wouldn't do it, but that's okay. We'll get to it one day, buddy. Good to see you. Yeah, it's cool to see this stuff. Hopefully, we'll be seeing. Oh, Brian, yeah, that's a really good point. Brian, new respect for the accomplishments of Apollo missions in the 60s and 70s, considering the limited tech of the day. Some serious slide rule skills. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, whatever device you're watching me on right now has more computing power, not just than the lunar module did to land on the moon, but probably than all of NASA did in the 60s. I mean, we have gone so far forward. Now, of course, the stuff that NASA designed only had to do one task, land on the moon. So it didn't have to, surf the internet, or it didn't have to, show you pictures of cats or whatever. So sure, our devices, while they're more powerful, they can also do a whole lot of other things. But still, the tech that you're carrying around would have made NASA very excited back in the 60s and 70s. Let's listen into Jeremy here. Oh, Jeremy started saying something, and then we lost comms there. I'm sure they'll be back shortly. So in the Apollo days, this is another thing. They didn't have this tracker here. I mean, in the early missions, they literally had a cardboard cutout of the rocket on a stick, and the map had like holes in it for the stick to get moved along. And I don't know if there was a guy back there moving the stick. I think it was clockwork. I think it was that complicated. But I mean, here we have a real-time. This is basically the same data that goes to mission control goes into this little app to show me what we've got. And there's the sun off in the background, and we've got the solar arrays pointed towards that. Here's the lit up windows you can see. There's still just a little bit of crescent moon lit up by the sun there. But as we go around the moon, the sun is going to get closer to that moon view as well, until finally it disappears behind it and we get the solar eclipse. And the Earth will just keep moving out in this direction as well, away from the moon. So we'll get a better and better view of that. And then basically the next 4 days will be the whole thing playing out in reverse, except the Earth will be getting bigger in the window and the moon will be getting smaller. And I think that, yeah, we took a few pictures of the Earth on the way out. Wow, isn't that cool? I bet after going around the moon, after being the 4 most isolated people in the world for that 40 minutes, I bet the Earth is going to look different on the way back in than it looked on the way out to the moon. That's what all the astronauts say. The biggest discoveries that they make are about our Earth and how important it is. Hey, Garrett. Oh, good question. So the lander for the moon is still a bit of a mystery. Here, let me just bring down.
The Earth behind it.
There we go.
Now that we are behind,
they're just talking about the mission patch and stuff like that. So the landers are not being made by NASA, and this is one of the problems. I mean, NASA's always worked with companies to build these things, Boeing and Northrop Grumman and all those kinds of things back in the Apollo days. But now the companies are doing it themselves, and NASA's just going to buy seats on it. So NASA doesn't sort of have the control over these programs that they used to in the old days. Now there's good and bad of that, I'm sure. But what it comes down to is SpaceX is building the human landing system, which is basically their gigantic Starship spacecraft, which is actually designed to carry huge satellites and take thousands of people to Mars and all of these big plans that they have. And they put it forward as an option for a moon lander. Now it's about 30 times as big as the Orion spacecraft itself. And frankly, it's a ridiculous. It's like taking an F1 race car and then using it to, drive to the corner store once a week and that's it. Like it's just total overkill for the job. And because of that, it's so much more complicated. It's been running behind and there's all sorts of issues. It still hasn't flown successfully and stuff like that. So there's issues there. They're supposed to do some tests this summer, and then they're supposed to get it up and have it land on the moon robotically before it gets used as a moon lander. The other company is Blue Origin, and they are building a purpose-built moon lander. It's still a little tall for my liking, but it's at least not bigger than it needs to be, because it's not trying to do all things. It's just trying to land on the moon for this program. Probably not as saleable from the company's point of view, and that's probably why SpaceX puts all of its eggs in one basket. They're like, Starship can do everything, and so it's big. I'm not sure which system is gonna work out. I was pretty down on Starship for quite a while because I think they like to make explosion videos more than progress for a while there. But sometime next year, Artemis 2 will launch into Earth orbit, the same Orion spacecraft that we're testing out now. Or, pardon me, Artemis 3. Artemis 3. And it will dock with both of those lunar landers. So SpaceX's human landing system and the Blue Origin moon lander will both have to be ready for next year to dock with Orion as part of Artemis 3. And then the next year, so 2028, there will be a moon landing on Artemis 4 and a moon landing on Artemis 5. Presumably, each one will use, one will use Blue Origin, one will use Starship. None of them are like the Apollo. The Apollo spacecraft was like, let's build a spacecraft that is so flimsy that it can just barely survive landing on the moon without killing the astronauts. I mean, the rockets were so inefficient that weight was a big problem. And so any amount of extra weight, they didn't have. Seats, seatbelts, no seatbelts. There's no space for them. Seats, there's no space for them. The astronauts will stand when they're landing. They quibbled over the sizes of the windows because window weight is heavier than the aluminum foil that they used for the outer skin. Like you could walk up to the Apollo lunar module and you could take a screwdriver and you could just punch a hole in it, and that would be that. So that was done like on the ultimate shoestring because there was just no way to carry something big to the moon. Now we've got big rockets. We've got the capability to do this kind of thing, but it's kind of gone the other direction, especially with Starship. It's like, here's my 20-story tall moon lander. Well, the crew's up at the top of that moon lander. Now you need an elevator in your spaceship just to get down onto the ground. It would be pretty sucky to land on the moon and then not be able to get out of your spaceship because it's too tall to get out of. And actually, I did a little study where it turns out that of all the spacecraft that have ever landed on the moon, the only successful ones have been ones that are wider than they are tall throughout all of history. Now, yes, modern technology, blah, blah, blah. But even the last couple of years, we've seen a bunch of companies make landers and they're too tall and they land on the moon and they were going too fast in one direction and they hit and then they fall over. You can't do that with people. So frankly, I'm glad that Jeremy was on Artemis 2, because Artemis 2, that mission didn't change with the administration. It didn't change with the president. There's been a lot of changes at NASA in the last year, particularly, and a bunch of changes to the moon missions as early, like just a couple of weeks ago. The administrator basically said, yeah, we're doing everything differently. But Artemis 2 stayed the same, and so we got to fly it. I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest. We will see. I hope that SpaceX and Blue Origin get their moon landers functioning and ready to go and tested and safe, because of all of the risky parts of the mission. I mean, launch is dangerous. Landing back on Earth is dangerous. Going out to space is dangerous. All these things. But landing on the moon and then your spaceship either crashing there or you not being able to get out, being marooned on the moon, is probably the worst possible outcome. I mean, the moon is something that everyone in the world looks at all the time. If you suddenly knew that the moon was now the resting place of some dead astronauts, it would change so many things about the way we regard the moon, the way we regard ourselves, the way we regard science. They really need to get their act together and do it properly. And so, yeah, with the size of Starship, it is, yes, due to how flat the ground would need to be, would there need to be pre-landing work to set up? Yeah, so Starship is, it's really tall, and it's on a rocket that's really tall. And so far SpaceX has launched this thing, and the booster has come back and landed and been caught by, they call them chopsticks. It's basically like just things that go out and grab the top so that it doesn't tip over. They haven't landed the Starship part successfully yet. In fact, it tends to burn up on reentry right now still. They had the last two worked, and I think that they're on a new model. So this summer, I think they've solved those issues. But yeah, I'm really concerned. The moon is not flat. I mean, even one of the Apollo spacecraft, which, if you remember what they looked like, they were very squat and their legs stuck way out to the sides to be nice and stable. One of them landed on a bit of a slope, only like a 10 or 12 degree slope. And the whole thing almost went over because of the momentum of when and basically it was 50-50, just luck of the draw that it settled back on its legs rather than flipping over, which would have been the end for those astronauts. Even if they weren't injured in the crash, like you can't just get out and flip the thing back over. Well, I don't know, maybe you could, but it was, a rock through that they would have lost all their atmosphere. It could have been a nasty thing. And that was with a very conservatively designed lander. You could conceivably send robots there and basically build a nice flat landing pad and maybe even a tower that would grab onto things. But that's not happening by next year. And there's the big push, and this is where politics comes in. There's the big push for the moon landing to happen before President Trump's term ends. Of course, every president wants to take credit for stuff. For those of you that still believe that President Trump's term will end, that's a consideration. And also, there's a push to, there's supposedly a race with China. Well, China doesn't think it's a race. They're just doing their thing. And yeah, they're going to land on the moon, and they figure they'll probably land on the moon by 2030. They're going it alone. They've had some space program help from the Russians in the past, but they pretty much have a whole parallel space program. They have their own space telescope. They have, space station. They're launching their own space telescope this year, like the Hubble. They've got an excellent space program that nobody really hears anything about here in the West. So I don't think it's really a race. I don't think it's something that's worth racing for, but that kind of push is definitely there. And so setting up a landing pad on the moon, that's a great sort of medium-term kind of thing, but it's not gonna satisfy those political goals. Anyway, we'll have to see what happens. All that I know is that the first human mission of the Artemis program is going great. We've literally hit all the milestones, and at this point, it's ride home and then re-enter, and that is really at this point I'm just waiting for them to upload all those pictures, because they've probably got about 12 SD cards from those digital cameras just waiting to get downloaded. And yeah, let's see what they're talking about here now. Where's our volume?
You will likely have to adjust the exposure. That's all I have for you. Let me know if you have anything for us.
There we go. Okay. Yasmina, yeah, so they are essentially in what we call microgravity, which commonly called zero gravity. Technically, there is gravity there. But it's like when you're in an elevator and the elevator starts going down, you sort of feel that lurch in your stomach. You you're briefly in microgravity when that happens. It's like in free fall. And that's what the crew's in. So they're floating around. There is gravity from the moon that is affecting the spacecraft, but they are falling in free fall inside the spacecraft. So they're basically floating around. And they'll be like that until they land back on the Earth. So 9.5 days of no gravity, essentially, or not feeling gravity. I think that would be very disconcerting. That's why they have to work out during the mission, because it doesn't take long for your muscles to just atrophy. If you're like, even when you're just sitting here, I'm using, muscles to keep my spine erect against gravity. When you remove that, suddenly your muscles literally have nothing to do, and your body says, oh, we don't need these, and it just eats them, basically. So you need to give your muscles some kind of exercise. And you can't lift weights, obviously, because the weights don't weigh anything. They're weightless. So they have a rowing machine in there, basically. And when they use the rowing machine, it wiggles the spacecraft enough that the cameras on the end of the little solar arrays start wiggling back and forth. So you can always tell when someone's exercising, because on the external view, the camera will just start wiggling, and you know what's going on. All right, let me just see if we can get... Yeah, so there's the view of the moon that they have, just a tiny, thin little crescent. The sun is right over there, so pretty soon, let's see, we should be coming in about 9 or 10 minutes, coming into that eclipse time. Now, I don't think we'll be getting live stuff back from that. I think they're now trying to upload some of the images. Yeah, here's their camera view from the spacecraft, and it doesn't even have the moon in it anymore, because they've sort of moved enough. So let me see if I can find some of these pictures here. No, nothing new. What are you guys doing? Come on. Give me some pictures. Here, let's go to... Yeah, no new pictures have come down, and they're still doing what I would call filler on the NASA TV channel, where they're bringing various people in just to talk about, various aspects of the mission to come or things like that. Nothing that's related to sort of what's going on here. And all those videos are available on the NASA, nasa.gov. And if you Google NASA Artemis, you will get to their site, and you'll find some pretty amazing shots. Let's see if any new videos have come down. Do a little refresher. No, it doesn't look like it. So the latest update that we have is at 6:24 our time, which is more than half an hour ago, which just refers to the fact that they saw Earthrise and they came around from behind the moon.
What you're interested in the crew.
Here we're going to
learning
talk
during
about
that
the
time
solar
frame.
eclipse part.
Yeah. So the data set
So yes, there's so many things. How to pick one. So I'd say the thing that I'm most interested in seeing is some of their annotations that they're taking. So in this opportunity, it's a very dynamic type of experience in that we don't normally see this activity, and so being able to have crew observe the solar corona and then also annotate it in their on their portable computing device is just such a unique thing that humans can give to missions, and also particularly being able to annotate what they're observing while they're talking about it is also unique to being able to have astronauts in orbit as well, because we won't be able to have annotations on the lunar surface because the astronauts will be in suits. They're going to be collecting samples, they're going to be deploying instruments, and so personally, I'm really excited to see some of these annotations and to see how that develops over time, because you've heard a lot of descriptions, and I think when people are describing something that's unique and different, you can interpret it differently. But if you're drawing and you're marking, particularly just going back to like the color provinces, for example, and those boundaries, you know exactly what they meant. And really, I'm just very excited about those annotations. There's been some famous annotations that the Apollo crew have made, particularly about solar coronas and the structures and lofted dust that have given a lot of debate within the scientific community of they're observing this phenomenon, and now it's our job to hypothesize of like why are they observing this, like what is going on. So I think that's just a really cool part of exploration and science, and this beautiful thing that we're about to do.
Well, now you've got me excited about the annotations too. I mean, I've been excited about the pictures and the audio, but now
don't sleep on the annotations. I am very excited to see these little sketches that they're able to draw out, and we have pictures that they can just draw right on as like this particular thing is different than what we've seen. So I'm excited about that.
I'm excited too. Angela Garcia, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great time tonight on console.
Thank you, and you've been doing a great job, and it's so excited to see where we go from here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so a little discussion there about the upcoming observations of the solar eclipse from the moon. It's actually, I mean, other than not being affected by the atmosphere, as an eclipse goes, it's not as good of a view as we would get from here on Earth, because it only lasts for a brief period of time, because the moon is just so ginormous compared to the sun from where they are. They're just so close to it that, the moon eclipses not just the center part of the sun, but also the whole outer atmosphere. And so in some ways, like if you've seen a solar eclipse from Earth, even on NASA TV or whatever, that view will be probably better in many ways. And yet, because they're seeing it with no atmosphere, and because it's being eclipsed by the moon with no kind of distortion or any absorption from our atmosphere, being outside in space makes a huge difference. We see that with the Hubble Space Telescope. The Hubble Space Telescope is not the biggest telescope that humanity's ever built. In fact, it nowadays would be considered a pretty small telescope for a major observatory. But because it's outside the atmosphere, all that distortion is gone.
Integrity, Houston, you have 3 minutes until we go into a forward link LOS. We will be back up with you in about an hour during the eclipse on Madrid.
Thanks for the heads up. Look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Likewise.
So this is kind of interesting. They will be losing signal one way, essentially. And so they won't be able to transmit up to the astronauts. I think we'll still be getting images down. However, that will be a while in the future. So we'll wait and see what the signal is here. And if we lose signal from the spacecraft, we'll probably end the stream for a little while, just because there will literally be nothing to look at for a while. And if you don't, I'm supposed to say this, like and follow, because, you know, if you think this is a fun thing to do, if you give us a like, you'll be able to see the images that I'll post afterwards. Of course, you can also find them yourself on NASA, but I've been sorting through and trying to get all the good ones posted on my Scott the Skywatcher Facebook page. That's where I do my own astronomy stuff when I'm not doing things for the Manitoba Museum. And yeah, so sometimes, especially if it's a fast breaking thing, like if I decide to set up my telescope and look at the moon or something like that, I just do that through this page rather than the museum page, because those things need to be scheduled more in advance. And, you know, if it's cloudy, it's just hard to schedule a lot of those kinds of things for the formal museum page. So this is where I do a bunch of my other things. So you're welcome to join us here, like and follow and all that social media stuff. And if you click on the little bell, you'll actually be able, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you'll get the notification for when I go live. That's probably the best stuff, is when I go live, and it's either an event like this, or it's I've got the telescope out and I'm looking at something and trying to share that around.
From the Orion spacecraft with our Artemis II crew inside. That's Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen. We are still live for our lunar flyby coverage. The crew is in a short break while the spacecraft is pivoted away from the moon. We are going to be going into a solar eclipse. This is the first time anyone has ever seen a solar eclipse from the moon. So it's going to be a unique vantage point for our crew. But ahead of heading into that solar eclipse, we need to charge the batteries on the Orion spacecraft. Therefore, we have positioned the solar arrays into the sunlight to allow time for those batteries to charge. We will get back pointed at the moon just in time for that solar eclipse. We are also in a forward link LOS. What that means is essentially we cannot send calls or commands to the crew right now from the ground. However, we clearly get all of their data and communications.
Well, excellent. So we still will get the live stuff. David says, where can we buy the patch for Artemis? Well, that's a great question. I was gifted one a while ago, which I believe came from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. They've got a store, basically, and that's where they have the official ones. There's also a place called the Space Store, and that is a place that basically just resells a bunch of stuff like that. But the official Artemis patch, Artemis 2, is available, and Jeremy Hansen's mission patch that he, each crew member has their own sort of personal patch. That was designed by an Anishinaabe indigenous artist here in Manitoba, actually. And that is available through the Canadian Space Agency's web store. So you can check both of those spots. I've got stickers of the Jeremy Hansen patch. So if anybody wants stickers, either drop me a message here, or you can drop by the planetarium and visit us when we're open, Tuesday through Sunday. And the planetarium folks have some stickers while they're available. I have a small private stock as well. So if you can't find one there, let me know and I'll see if I can hook you up with a Jeremy sticker. Okay, so we are going to conclude our live stream because, like I say, we're not going to be getting as much of the stuff back in the next little while. I will post as many of the pictures as come down tonight, and throughout the night you'll probably see additional images coming back from some of those amazing views that Jeremy and the crew will have had as they went around the moon. I can't believe we just watched a Canadian astronaut go around the moon. I mean, I never thought that would happen, because it is just like lunar flights were such a difficult, big deal back in the day. The idea that they ever would have included a non-American was just ridiculous, you know. And then the International Space Station era, with all these countries working together, we have heard that they've already announced, not who it is, but they have announced that as part of the Artemis program, a Japanese astronaut will walk on the moon. They haven't announced that a Canadian astronaut will walk on the moon. However, they've said that Canada has 2 seats aboard the Artemis program, according to the agreement. Jeremy was one of them. Normally what happens is someone's a backup, and then the next mission comes around, they become the prime pilot. So if that was followed, Jenny Gibbons would be the next Canadian in space, or on a lunar mission. And it is likely that that mission would include a landing. Now, whether that means that Jenny would be one of the people to land on the moon, or be one of the people in the spacecraft afterwards, that's hard to say. But I am making the hope, not even a prediction, that the first Canadian to land on the moon will be Jenny Gibbons, which would make Canada the first country in the world to have their first lunar astronaut be a woman, which I think would be amazing. We're going to try and get Jeremy and Jenny here in Winnipeg, in Treaty 1 territory, to speak to us after the mission. And I'm sure they'll be doing a big tour and stuff like that. The CSA is usually very good about getting people out. Like I say, Jeremy's visited us 3 times already. We're really looking forward to seeing him after the flight. We will let you know, of course, when that happens. It won't be for a while, I'm sure. I imagine he gets a bit of a vacation after he gets back. But we're looking forward to that. So is this the end of this broadcast? Yes. Is it the end of the Artemis program? No, lots to come. And it's certainly not the end of Canadians in space. So look forward to that. We will see you all next time, or at the very latest on Friday, when the team splashes back down here on Earth. So we'll be on for that. Thanks everybody for being here. If you like the program, please like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff, please, because the more people that watch, the better my ego feels. No, just kidding.